Hey folks, Mr. Howard here. I'm going to talk about literary analysis paragraphs today. We're going to run a review on those, and that's what this week's assignment is going to be. So I want to talk a little bit about the literary analysis paragraph, how we set it up. This is all review for you, but you may be getting rusty sitting at home, not having to write these kinds of things, and it would be good for you to get this practice and continue to prep for next year. Speaking of which, as long as I'm throwing a little motivation out there, like everything we do in English class is transferable. Those skills are supposed to prepare you for life. You need to be able to write. You need to be able to organize your thoughts. You need to be able to read something and analyze it in a complex way, and then communicate your thoughts about it in writing. We just do it through literature because literature is entertaining and teaches moral lessons, and people can get really invested in it. But ask your parents, like they're working in a job, and when they have to write, they're using all of the same skills, and those skills have to transfer. So I may make another video later this week for you about transferring those writing skills. Specifically into writing emails. Like I'm receiving a whole lot of emails from a whole lot of students right now, and a lot of you are transferring the skills beautifully, but some of you aren't. Like some of you are just sending me an email. There's no greeting. There's no beginning line, not complete sentences, not capital letters. It's not signed. There's lots of you should be using the skills that you've learned in class in all of your communications with everybody, because the way that you use those skills reflects on you as a person, and that's why we teach the stuff in school. Sure, I want you to be able to analyze literature, but when you leave school, you're not going to be using these skills to analyze literature. You're going to be using them in your job, and so you have to transfer them. We get fooled into believing in school that what we learn is specifically for a grade, and that's the whole purpose. And no, that is not the purpose. Yes, I understand that grades are important to you, to your parents, to colleges when you go there, but at the end of the day, whether you can understand what you read, think about it critically, and then communicate your thoughts about what you've read in writing is enormously important. And that's what we're doing here. So, PSA over. Let's talk about writing a literary analysis paragraph. We've talked about it as an ACE paragraph all year long. It's got these three elements: assertion, citation, explanation. We're going to go through those three elements quickly. The first area, and the area where most people have trouble, is what we call the assertion. The assertion is like a mini thesis statement for your paragraph. It's generally the first sentence. Doesn't have to be. It could be the second sentence. I guess very occasionally it can be the third sentence if you need to give some background information before you drop your assertion down. Speaking of sentences, pause again, rewind. This idea that a paragraph is 5 sentences, flush that down the toilet. That's a terrible idea. That's a lazy man's crutch. Right, that's somebody who had to write an assignment for English class and asked their teacher, "What's the minimum number of sentences I have to write a paragraph?" And the teacher was like, 5, because they wanted at least 5 sentences. But that's not any kind of rule. The rule is you write until you've finished explaining what it is that you're trying to get across in enough detail that it's comprehensive, and that can be well more than 5 sentences. So having an arbitrary number of sentences that you're going to write in these paragraphs is a terrible idea. It's not fulfilling the goal, which is to teach you to be competent writers in the real world. So chuck that idea. It's gone. Anyway, back to assertions. You got to start with an assertion. In order to write a decent assertion on a story or a book or something you're assigned in English class, we call it a literary assertion or a thematic assertion. It's got to do more than just talk about the plot of the story. So I don't know how many times I've written it on people's papers or on Google Docs that you've sent in. You need to avoid plot-based assertions. These characters are not real people. This is not a history class. They've been written this way by an author to affect a reader, and we need to get on that level. We need to get away from, hey, this is what happened in the story, or let's treat this character as if Katniss Everdeen is a real person in real life. And we need to start thinking about why Katniss Everdeen was written the way that she was written. Why Bellerophon from Bellerophon and Pegasus, which we just read, was written the way he was written. What is the author trying to get across there? So there's sort of three ways that we can make an assertion literary. And the best literary assertions tend to have all three of them mixed together. So assertion point number one, bring the author into it. If you want to get away from the idea that these characters are real people and from plot summary, consider how the author crafted the story to affect the reader. So bring the author into it. That's one way to start making your assertion literary. The second would be to look for literary elements. We've talked about, I don't know how many literary terms and literary elements over the course of the year, but you could talk about symbols. You know, is there something symbolic in the story? Does Pegasus symbolize something? You know, does the Mockingjay symbolize something? That's great. If you can find a symbol, let's talk about a symbol. But, you know, you could talk about figurative language. Does the author use metaphors or similes or paradoxes or oxymorons? And what's the purpose of the oxymoron? You know, let's look at that. How is the author using that? How is it affecting the reader? Or if you want to go with more general stuff, characterization. Is there direct or indirect characterization? Are they trying to make the reader feel a certain way about a character? How are they doing that through the words that they choose? So you can look at characterization. You could look at allusion. Is the author making references to other works of literature or other familiar stories or events? How? Why? Let's get that in there. So make it literary by including literary elements in your assertion. And then finally, the fourth and most important one is make it thematic. Sometimes instead of calling it a literary assertion, we call it a thematic assertion. Every story ever written is trying to get across lessons to the reader. You know, so what are the lessons? What's the author doing here? Why does Lillian Hyde make Bellerophon a dynamic character? What lesson comes out of that? That's a characterization question. Why does Suzanne Collins make Katniss Everdeen a dynamic character? Why is it that she changes from being somebody who only depends on herself and is not willing to let anybody else in to being a team player? What is Collins trying to teach us? So, I mean, like, there's any number of ways that you can approach this, but you have to get away from the plot and get into literary elements, themes, the author's intent, something like that to make your assertion matter. So we start with that assertion. You throw an assertion down. The second part of our paragraph structure is what's called citation. We know we need to cite. We know citation is sort of short for quotation. Actually, it doesn't have to be. We'll get into that. But you need to support your claim. Whatever your claim is, whatever you've just asserted, you need to support it for it to be believable by the readers. And that means you've got to use quotation and analysis in some way, or I'll say citation and analysis because there's paraphrase. There's other ways to do it without necessarily dropping a direct quotation. So if you're going to do any of these things, if you're going to drop a citation, though, you need to introduce that citation. You need to introduce the quote. You can't just quote drop. So, you know, what plot context? I've written this, I don't know how many papers. Plot context. You need to give adequate plot context to understand the quote. Like, you want to assume your readers read the book. You want to assume your reader is a peer. It's not Mr. Howard. It's somebody from your class who's also read the book, somebody of equal intelligence to you. And you want to set up the quotation and explain where it comes from and who's talking, and you know what the relevant context is around it, so that we can understand that. Don't go into plot summary. Don't give us like 3 sentences of everything that's going on in the book up to then, but just assuming your reader has read the story, give us enough to go on. So you need to do that, and then you're going to put your quote down there. But a paragraph should not just have one giant beefy quotation in the middle of it. You can, but that's not what I would recommend. The best paragraphs use short quotations. There's a general ratio. It's called the 1-to-3 ratio. However long your quotation is, as a reader, I expect 3 times as much analysis. So if you pick some huge, beefy, like 2 or 3 sentence long quotation, I'm going to expect 6 to 12 sentences of analysis on the other end. Don't do that to yourself. Pick the relevant quotation and get it in there and cut it down. Talk about just the small part that you need to talk about. A paragraph is better with multiple quotations than it is with a single quotation. So using a number of small quotations or cutting that big quotation down and just using a couple little parts from it is way better and more convincing and less boring for your reader to read. We're interested in reading what you think, what you have to say, not what somebody else has said. So use it to get across your own ideas. So there's other ways to do quotation, though. You don't have to have like a whole sentence or something. You could have short quotations with citations. For example, if you're talking about a character and how a character changes, you could look at individual words that are used to describe that character at the beginning of the story and then at the end of the story, and you can put them in a list. Katniss is described as this, and this in chapter 1. By the end of the story, these are the words that are used to describe, that Collins uses to describe her, and then show the contrast of those individual words in your analysis. So you could use short quotations even down to a series of single word quotations. You can also use paraphrase. If you want to talk about something that happens in the plot that's bigger than you can't just quote from. I mean, we don't need a quote to say this happened. We don't need a quote to say that in the Hunger Games, Rue died, quotation, Rue died. Like, we don't need that. You can paraphrase that. If you're going to talk about something really important, like the fact that Katniss laid flowers down around or on Rue's body, and what that shows about her and her character change, you can paraphrase that. You don't have to drop a direct quotation from that scene unless you're going to analyze the language of that quotation. So there are lots of ways to do citations in your paper. Finally, we have the explanation. Every time you use a citation, you're going to have to connect it to your assertion. You need to do the work. Remember the 1-to-3 ratio. However long your quotation is, we're going to look for about 3 times as much explanation. So how are we going to connect your quote to the assertion? Well, first off, don't assume that quotes speak for themselves. They don't. You always have to analyze them. So there are lots of things you can analyze. The primary thing to analyze is what we call diction. Diction is a fancy word for the author's word choice. So what words does the author use? Why does the author use that word or that series of words? Are there any symbolic meanings in those words? What are the connotations of those words? What can be deduced by looking at those words? What is implied through those words? These are the kinds of things that you want to dig into and look at. And if the quote doesn't offer any of these avenues of analysis, why are you using it? So really the foundation of a good analysis paragraph is finding the quote that you want to use before you write the paragraph. So find a couple of powerful quotations that offer good analytical possibilities, and then write your assertion about those, and then use them and analyze them for your reader. That's the way that you would be most successful in writing a literary analysis paragraph. So couple of other things, and then I'm going to cut this video. I want to cut it at 15 minutes, so I got about a minute left to talk here. And then I'm going to start another video, and I'll try and go through some examples using the Bellerophon and Pegasus story that we just read. A couple of other things. You can't write in the first person in your literary analysis paragraphs. When you're being formal, it's always got to be in the third person. So you can't use I, you can't use I think. You don't need to either. Just remember that it's a established rule of writing that anytime you're writing something, every sentence is paraphrased with an unwritten I think, because it's your thoughts on the story. So you don't have to get into that. You want to avoid us. You want to avoid anything that brings it into the second person as well. Don't reference your reader. Write it in sort of the sterile academic way that is the expectation. Yeah, I'm just going to stop there, and I'll